it. Hi everyone, thank you for joining in. Today we have Wesley with us. He's co-founder at SciMate, a certified CLI expert. They sent over 260,000 emails every month, and from that they are able to generate over 800 SQLs for their customers. You heard it right, with a reply rate of over 15% with most of their campaigns. This agency is killing it in terms of getting their clients booked with leads. So Wesley, thank you very much for joining us today. Like to learn about what do you write in these emails, how to write and craft these subject lines and copies to get the maximum replies and maximum SQLs. So again, thank you very much for joining today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Let's dive right straight into it.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll start off, Wesley, with what are some key elements, if you can, start off with basic things, if for people who might not know much about cold email as of now. So what are some key elements that would make a cold email stand out in a crowded inbox?
Very good question. I think the most important thing is you must have solving the right problem, right? So we focus our email A/B testing primarily on the pain point and what is the outcome from buying the product or the service, right? Because without those, like nothing's gonna work. I see a lot of cold email in my spam inbox where they talk about the service. This is the features that you get from working with us. This is what we do. This is how we are better than the current software that you're working with, right? But I feel that's a wrong approach. Focus on the pain point and the outcome, right? That is like the core things that we always focus on a cold email. Now, there's other things too, like risk reversal, like risk reduction, what I would call it. Those are essentially like trial and things like that. You can absolutely leverage that into the cold email, social proof. But at the end of the day, the pain point and the outcome. So the most important things.
So focusing on the pain point is absolutely crucial. Like, what are some ways we can find out pain points of the people that we are sending these emails to? And if you can give some, one-liner examples or so for subject line or email.
Yeah. Okay, so those two different things. In terms of pain point, like, to be honest, we typically kind of relay that to your customer because they know the product best and they know the customer best, right? Like if you were just to launch like a cold email campaign, not knowing this is the actual problem that you're solving, then I would tell them like right away, look, like this is not gonna work. Like you're building a product that you don't even know the pain even exists. Right? So we rely on them in that sense. And now when it comes to outcomes, think of it as like, let's take how do you say it, like video editing, for example. Like you making like, let's say you have a service and you make YouTube short for the businesses. Typically, you don't talk so much about like, look, this is what we can do. We can make your video like look like this. We can make your video different like that, right? We're talking about views, which is the outcome. Like how many views you get from me, how many from that view, how many leads you can generate for me, and in that time, like how many subscribers, how many sort of like new customer you can like estimate that you can get from me. Like, so those are the outcome. You don't sell video editing. You sell views, you sell eyes, you sell attentions. Those are the things that you want to sell on. In terms of subject line, we keep it really simple. And I'll give you a trick. This is what I tell my staff whenever like they get stuck on like, I don't know how to write a good subject line. So obviously the purpose of subject line is to sell the click. Like, you don't want to summarize the entire email into the subject line. So the subject line the only purpose of the subject line is to sell the click, right? And if you get stuck, think of the topic that the email is talking about and just use that subject line, right? I'm not going to give you an example, but let's say you are selling a software who maybe like an analytics software, right? Let's say they help you analyze your cold email campaign. Make it straightforward. Your subject line should be something simple as like your cold email analytics, right? That is a topic because when you see it, they will think, okay, this is related to what we're doing. They give me the stat, right? So you click on it. It sounds like an internal email, right? But when you open it, it's different things.
So keeping it simple, we can just say cold email analytics. So that brings some intrigue that what might it be about. And once someone clicks on it, the email copy can be something like, are you struggling with your email?
Yeah.
Analytics, something like that. How long should the email subject line and body be?
Good question. So for subject line, I typically try to keep it within like 2-3 words maximum. Sometimes it could get to 4 or 5, which is like what I try to steer away from. But if it gets to that, it's totally fine, but no more than 5. 2 or 3 is like your sweet spot, or even 4, like 2 to 4 is really the sweet spot. Now, when it comes to When it comes to the email body, that's a different story. Like I know there's a lot of like suggestions out there saying that the shorter the better, but I could argue the shorter sometimes is not better. But the sweet spot is you have to find the exact like wording so that like it's not too vague, but it's not too much either. Definitely less than 80 to like 90 words maximum, no more than that. But if it's like under, let's say like 20, 30 words, and okay, maybe give some more context. It really depends on industry to industry. I would say the suggestion is just to test different framework, test different copy to see which works. I can't tell you which one works better, but that's like the range that we're trying to aim for.
So, what are some cold email structures? So, by structure or framework, I mean, I have seen these structures like BAB and before after bridge, and then there are others like this. So, what are some other structures that you use, you prefer, for A/B testing, and what has worked for you guys?
Yeah, so structure is pretty simple. It's three things you want to cover. Number one is the first line. The second one is body, which is the offer, and then the CTA. Like every single cold email, doesn't matter how long, doesn't matter how many paragraphs, sentences, should have those three things, right? So again, first line. The first line, you typically answer the question, why you, why now? Why are you reaching out to them? And why now? Obviously, you're reaching out to them because they might have a certain problem. And why now? Because some sort of like observation that you see from that particular prospect. So that's the first line. The body is actually the offer. What can you do for them? What is the outcome? Like I was mentioning earlier, if you were to sell, let's say, video editing, you want to talk about how many views you can get for them within a month. You want to talk about how many customer that can generate into, how many leads that views could, convert into, conversion rate and things like that. So that's the body. And then CTA, what's next, right? Obviously, the goal is most of the time is there's only two goals, right? Whether you are POG or or sales one, product-led growth or sales-led growth, SLG. SLG, essentially, you're trying to start a meeting. But obviously in the CTA, I tend to not to push so hard for a meeting. Right? Like everyone talk about like soft CTA, which makes sense, like it works. No one want to no one want to be sold a meeting. Like they want to talk about the next step. Like what is the next step? You can potentially say things like, hey, is it okay if I show you how you can achieve this outcome? Like I don't mention anything about meeting. I don't mention anything about like 8 a.m. next Saturday or things like that, right? I would talk about, hey, let me show you how you can fix this problem. And then they say yes, then you start booking the meeting afterward. Yeah. The other hand, if you're selling product-led growth, meaning that you want to drive like signups, then there's another strategy. Like, hey, we have like certain XYZ stuff that could help you on our website. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, then it's fine. It's free trial. Right? So depending on your goal, whichever it might be, the CTA could be different.
Interesting. We'll come back to product-led emails as well. But before that, in sales-led emails, where the goal is to get a meeting scheduled, I have observed that a lot of people, and it's also working for them, are sending some kind of a video or, a personalized video for their requirements. So let's say it's an analytics software. So they would run the analytics software on their website or show a kind of a demo of it, a video maybe, or a presentation or a PDF cheat sheet, something like that. Like these are the 10 things you're not tracking, something like that. And then they send it over. So what have you seen? Like asking for next step as a CTA or asking for sending, case study or a video or an offer type thing?
Like a sales
What?
asset. Yeah.
Yeah, sales asset. Yeah. What do you think
Yeah.
has worked so far?
I mean, that's a good question, to be honest. And like, I see this for every industry that we're testing so far. If you have a really good sell asset, like if you have a really solid, let's say, demo video that only lasts about like 2 to 3 minutes and you covered your product and you covered the exact pain point that you're solving for, right? Like that could work. In general, though, what I'm seeing is products, they don't have a good demo video, so that something about the video is just not intriguing enough, or they're not solving the right problem, the problem that the prospect don't care about. In general, if that's the case, you potentially can get a lot more positive responses that people want to see your asset. But those are people who like what we're calling like a freebie collectors, right? They want to collect like freebies, they want to collect documentation to read for themselves, but they don't want to do anything with you. So you're essentially just wasting time and you don't get any meetings to begin with. So our strategy has always
Just
been
a second, Wesley. I think there's some.
yeah. So typically, it really depends on the asset you're sending. So if you have like a really solid video, like 2 3 short video that can actually describe the product, and talk about the exact pain point that they're saving, sure, that could work. A lot of the time, you're essentially reaching out to people who what we're calling like freebie collectors. So they want to collect this documentation. They want to look for a solution out there, but they're not ready to buy. Right? So you're essentially just wasting your time. So our strategy has always been like in the first email that we're sending out, push for a meeting. Right. And as I was mentioning earlier, we don't talk like, hey, how about like next Tuesday at 8 a.m. We're talking about, hey, let me show you how to fix that problem. Right. I want to say yes, sure. Ask for a meeting afterward. And then if they don't respond after that, then I would send like a sales asset in the follow-up. So that's like some strategy that I've been seeing. But in general, if you ask to send for an asset, the positive reply rate is going to be a lot higher, but the booking rate is going to be less. And in the other hand, the other way around, the booking rate might be a little bit more, but the positive response is less.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. So taking it forward with the product-led emails. So what is the best way to send emails to, let's say, a list of leads so that they try the product? What I have seen is that no one is going to trust a random link, right?
Yeah.
And a random company to, go ahead and sign up for a trial.
Yeah.
But what have you seen? And if you can share any, approx numbers around that.
Yeah, of course. So to give you some context, right now we're working with our clients and they are essentially like a marketplace, right? They're trying to drive user into the website. Typically what we do is, again, it really all boils down to the problem, right? Like if it's not a good enough problem, so they don't even care about being part of like using that software, then nothing can save you. Like there's no strategy can save you, right? But in this scenario, it's a marketplace. In the first email, we're essentially saying things like, hey, we have like these things within the marketplace that you might be interested in. For unmute for that. Okay, so we're essentially saying things like, hey, there's a few things in this like marketplace that we can send it to you that can potentially solve your problem, like opportunities for you, for example. And then the CTA will be something like, hey, do you have enough bandwidth to like work in these projects and things like that within this marketplace? If they say yeah, like then we just send out like the link so they can sign up. Not necessarily the sign up link, but we will send like the link that are inside the marketplace. And when they click on it, they get a snippet of what's inside of it. But to see the complete thing, they have to sign up for it. So in a nutshell, we essentially introduce that like, hey, we have like a few things in the marketplace that potentially help you. And when they click on it, it's like a snippet, and then they have to sign up to see the entire thing. So essentially, that's like the entire strategy that we're seeing. It's working for PRG.
Really interesting. And what kind of, if there's a product person, audience, what kind of sign up rate at best they can expect? Let's say they send 100,000 emails and everything goes well. So what kind of sign ups they can expect from this kind of a campaign?
Yeah, I think right now we're seeing somewhere around like 5% sign up rate. So to do the math correctly, if like 1,000 people if we're reaching out to like 1,000 people, you can expect about like 50 sign up. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And most of the signups happen in the second email once they ask for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes they would like look you up from like your email signature again. If you're solving the problems big enough, they would want to like search for your platform and things like that, and they would just sign up automatically.
Interesting. And Wesley, what's your take on follow-up emails? How many follow-ups should be sent? Do they even work today? What are your thoughts? And
Yeah.
how do you write a follow-up email when there are, no replies?
That's a good question. I was literally just having a talk with somebody else, like a little debate about follow-ups to think cold email has changed so much that to give you some context, like if like last year, we would do somewhere around like 7 to 10 follow-ups for the same prospect over the span of like 3 to 4 months, right? And then sometimes they would still buy on like the 7th or 8th email. But now with the sale deliverability, like you just can't do that anymore. So my strategy is a little bit different. My strategy is for every single prospect, we send the first email and then one follow-up maximum. If they don't respond, you would extract the lead, you would re-upload to the campaign about 2-3 months down the road, and then you would launch the campaign as if you were talking to that person the first time. You just give them a different offer, right? Because essentially what happened is no one's going to remember your cold email. Like I don't remember who sent me a cold email like last week, let alone like a few months ago, right? So instead of keep chasing the same person, spend that effort, spend that infrastructure to send it to someone else, right? And once you figure, let's say like a better offer, a better value proposition, for example, then just re-upload the lead, re-engage them a few months down the road, give them like a brand new email, right? And that time they might re-interact.
Makes sense. So it's better to just let them forget about you and then send another offer than to keep nagging them with follow-up emails. So yeah,
Exactly.
I've seen the same, that one follow-up works best, like the initial email, and then the next email straight away should be what we have seen is a breakup email.
Yeah.
So that it's okay, you don't need it, no worries, we
Yeah.
won't bother you, and then yeah.
And if they don't send you a response, just send them another email 2 months down the road. Like that, there's nothing. They're not gonna remember you. You know.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on, using emojis in subject lines or any other things we can use in subject line or
Yeah.
email body that can be interesting?
Good question. No emoji, no images, no link. Right now, we're just sending plain text only. We don't even track open rate, no click rates, and things like that. I think recently, which is like, when I say recent, it's like 1 or 2 weeks ago from this recording. I think Google was some change with Google about like if you track open rate, they would essentially, long story short, when
Yes,
you track an open rate, you insert a 1 by 1 image pixel, and essentially Google notify the user that like, hey, look, this person trying to send you an image. It could be spam. And then they give you a button so the user can click on it and your email go to spam right away, right? So I would not send any type of image, and emoji is one of them. It's an image. So just plain text only, unless when they respond to you and they say, yeah, can you send me more asset, like whatever you're trying to offer, right? Whether it's PDF, then afterward you can start sending link and things like that.
I see. Adding emojis and adding links is one mistake. What are some of the other mistakes you see people doing when they are just starting off with writing a cold email or sending it?
For beginners, I think I can really tell away. So like I can tell right away if someone who's like don't know too much about cold email is they talk about themselves. Like that's like the number one thing. They talk about how much the product, how much the service is better than a competitor. Like you can tell right away. You know if someone's a veteran in terms of like copywriters, they only talk about how they can solve the problems and what they can do for the prospect. Right. I'm revisiting it, but that's just as simple as it is. I just talk about, again, taking the example of selling video editing service, right? Just talk about how many views you can generate for them. Talking about how many leads from that video, like how many eyes, how many engagement, things like that. Instead of like, look, my video is better than that guy's video because of XYZ. Right? So that's like the number one thing. Of course, links, I think people are getting better at it. Images too, those are for mistakes that we talked about. But yeah, the main one is just talking about themselves like throughout the entire email.
Interesting. And have you seen any patterns, Wesley? What are the best times on which an email should be sent?
No, not really. Like as long as that person is awake, I would not send. Let's say I wanna target people in Asia, for example. I wouldn't send the email like morning, like US time, which is where I live in, and expect them to respond because like 2 a.m. their time, something like that, right? So whichever time they are awake. Yeah, like in general, people preferences are different. Like for me personally, I like to check my email once at noon and once like at the end of the day. So if I get a cold email and you send it to me at the end of the day, I will respond to you. So different people have preference. I think timing is not like a big deal that you should be
And
focusing.
any particular day preference, or all 7 days, just working days? When should the emails be sent?
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep it at just weekdays only. As a founder myself, on the weekend, I do like to just focus on like deep work and not like check my email at all. So I would say keep it to like weekday.
Interesting. And so, Wesley, have you seen any psychological triggers like, adding FOMO, social proof in cold emails? What are your thoughts on that? Do you add something like that?
Like social proof and things like that.
Yeah, social proof, adding some FOMO, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like if it's relevant and if it helps, use it. There's no point of like hiding it, right? Let's say you've been helping companies as big as like Amazon and that's like a huge social proof, or like Nike and things like that. Like there's no reason for you to hide it, right? Now I would say relevancy is very important too. That's why we A/B test, right? That's whole terminology for it. Because let's say your target audience are like startup and things like that, and you start mentioning like enterprises, like bunch of enterprises that you've been helping that's not relevant to startup, then they might not care about, right? But in general, if something could help you, A/B test it. If you got a free trial, A/B test it. You don't know until you actually put it into a test. But I do see that the more, I guess, asset, the more risk reduction that you can do for the buyer, the better it's.
So, you mentioned that A/B testing is crucial. So, let's say you are starting, you working for a new client.
Yeah.
So, what's your framework like? Do you start off with A/B tests, and how does it go ahead? Like, how many emails do you send for each variation, and then how does it go?
Okay. So I got this testing from one of my friends. His name is Dylan. Shout out to Dylan for this like testing framework. So usually what we do when we onboard a new client is we list out all the pain points that they are solving for the customer, and then the outcomes that the customer get from working with them, right? And we mix and match the pain point with the outcome. And this is essentially what we call angles, right? Like, hey, you might be lacking like leads. Let me give you more leads. And you can say, hey, I noticed you might be lacking leads. Let me give you more views on your video so you can get more leads, right? So we got like different angles. We don't really focus so much on like how the cold email structure, like the framework of the cold mail as much. We focus more on the pain point and the outcome. We test about like 5 to 10 of those. Or if it doesn't stick, then we just keep adding more angles and test on top of that. Once we found the angle, the pain point, and the outcome that stick for that particular market, we would start test different like framework, like writing framework and things like that. So test the pain point first, and then test the copy. Once you find the one that works, what we call the next step is optimizing. So there's difference between testing and optimizing. Testing is just like different angle to see what sticks, what doesn't. Optimizing is now you start tweaking like the CTA. Now you start tweaking like the subject line and things like that. So once you find the right angle, once you find the right like email framework that hit for that particular market, then you start like optimizing it. And once you have all of that, that's your winning angle.
So, when do you decide that this angle or this pain point works? So, you're trying out 5 to 10 different angles and pain points in the first to second line of your
Yeah.
cold email. When do you know that, okay, this is working? What percentage of reply rates or positive reply rates do you want before finalizing on that?
Yeah, good question. Like there is no really like a number, to be honest, and that's like something that we've been like talking a lot internally too. In general, like I try to aim for about 500 new leads per angle to see if it's relevant. But let's say you get a lot of like unsubscribe, you get a lot of like not interested. Let's say 200 emails in and you get like a tons of those, then you can kind of imagine that like, all right, this is not working, right? And you can like start like changing the angle right away instead of waiting for it to like reach more people. I think in the industry standard, from what I'm seeing, for every 200 to 300 new leads, you should get like one positive response. And I think every like 3 positive response, you should get like 1 meeting out of it. Like that's what I'm calling like quote unquote industry standard. This is what I'm seeing from the market, from other agency and things like that. But yeah, there's like no right or wrong, to be honest.
I see. So, from every 200 emails, one positive response, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And from every 3 positive responses, one meeting scheduled.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. And I hope that our listeners would be able to benchmark using this and work their way around this. Because a lot of times, if someone who is just starting off, if they're not getting 50%, 70% reply rate, then they are very demotivated. But they should know that even a 5 to 15% reply rate is amazing. It basically depends also on what are you selling, what is your ACV.
Exactly.
So, Wesley, since how long have you been doing email copywriting?
I've been doing it for roughly like 3 years, coming to my 4th years now. I did it for my very first business. Quick background, my first business I was trying to do, because I came from a quality assurance tech background. So I tried to like a QA agency for like startups so they can test their product before they launch. So that was about 3 years ago. And I've been sending cold email since then to get customer for my clients. And yeah, it just got better over the time and figure that I wanted to shift my business model. So that's why Sammy was born for about like 2 years ago. And just been focusing a lot more on doing cold email for the past few years now.
Awesome. So, Since you have started, ChatGPT has also started since around the same time.
Yeah.
So, how do you currently use ChatGPT or other AI tools for copywriting, and how do you see it growing in future?
Yeah. I mean, we've tested pretty much like every single copywriting AI tool out there that you can think of. And I would say that some are better than the others, but none has been up to our standard. And right now we're using obviously AI for every single call email we send out, but we treat it as like a variable, like relevancy, like personalization, like a one-liner sort of things. We still write a message, majority of it, 70% of it by hand, and then we use AI to just plug in the variables. And I'll give you a hack. If you are stuck on like personalization or you don't know what to personalize, our go-to is like what the company does, right? So it boiled down to what I was mentioning earlier. Your first line of email should talk about why them, why now. And nothing is better than answering the why them by mentioning this is what the company does. Or like I can say, like, Susan, I know this is what you do for your company. And typically I figure that is you have this pain point. So that is like one personalization that we always go to for using AI in cold email.
Any other hacks you have while writing cold email copies that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of personalization, we use Clay a lot. And one thing that we do is we would scrape the website just to see who they sell. You can also mention that to cold email to, let's say again, you sell video editing. You can say, hey, look, I noticed that you sell to enterprise, and I can help you create more views with like leaders from enterprises. You can mention exactly who they sell in a cold email, and that would help. You can tell AI to go on their website, browse their website, do like any of the research that you wanted to do, and then summarize it in a cold email too. So
So,
there's a lot of cool things you can do.
so Clay does this for you at scale, or is there some other tool that others can use to do this at scale?
This about last year when I started out, I used Google Sheet, believe it or not. It's like an integration on Google Sheet. This is when like GPT first launched, like GPT-3 and things like that. It was a pain to do that on Google Sheet. Now I use Clay. I think there's more tools out there too. But yeah, Clay is like the biggest player right now.
And what are some other variables or information about the company that we can add? Like this one that you just said, like you sell to enterprises typically, which is
Hmm.
a unique insight that usually from, you won't get this from the tools, right?
Yeah,
Like you won't get it from Apollo, Hunter, Zoom Info.
exactly.
So this is a different insight that you can get AI to find out from their website. So what are some other things that can be added by people in the emails to make it stand out and make it look like they have really done the research while the AI is doing it for them?
Yeah, good question. And like my honest opinion is that like you don't have to go crazy with it. Like, you don't like some campaigns we don't even use any of like AI personalization and it still works, right? I think most people they focus so much on like AI, they focus so much on like personalization that they forget again the most important thing is the pain point and the outcome. If you cannot like emphasize that fact, you cannot emphasize this is the pain point that they are facing and what you can do for them in a cold email, no matter how many personalization you throw in there, it's not gonna work, right? So I would say keep it simple. Why you, why now as the first lab email, just quote what the company does, just say this is who they sell to and potentially you can help them in that area if that's what your product or service do. Other than that, it depends from industry to industry, but in general, I would say keep the personalization to minimum, focus more on the pain point and the offer.
Awesome. So, lastly, Wesley, what are some places where our audience can go and follow some blogs or people who keep learning about cold emails and copywriting? Any
Yeah.
resources that you follow?
Yeah. I mean, LinkedIn is like the number one free resource that I can think of, right? Like people post, share things on LinkedIn all the time. Just engage with people on LinkedIn. Communities, the big things too. Those are a little bit harder to find. In general, just follow people on LinkedIn. They will post about the community, ask them if you can join the community. And usually those are like where you would stay in touch with the most up to date when it comes to cold email.
That's amazing, Wesley. So, with that, we are done. So, thank you very much, Wesley, for joining us and sharing all your knowledge about cold email copywriting.
Yeah. Of course.
I hope that this would be very helpful for everyone listening.
Yeah, hope so too. Well, it's been a pleasure and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.